I'm really excited about our guests here today. It is Kerri Squared, which we're all really excited about, and I'm sure there'll be many jokes. I apologize in advance, especially if our board members pop in to make some jokes about it. I want to recognize Eric Durham. Thank you for being here, part of the board, the Bryan School Alumni Association board. I'm going to introduce our guest host for the day, Ms. Kerri Engel. She is a member of the Bryan School Alumni Association board also, and she is going to be interviewing our guest today. Kerri, why don't you take it away?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone at this point. My name is Kerri Engel. So like Maddie said, I'm on the Alumni Association board, and I'm local to Greensboro. So I work at Contour Brands, and I'm apparel technical design manager. So I'm really happy to be here today, and also happy to be here with a fellow alumni, Kerri East. And Kerri, you have a really cool bio, with UNCG. So why don't you share a little bit about yourself and your connection to UNCG, your major and your grad year?
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. So I started UNCG in 2009, I think, as a nursing major because that's what everyone else in my family did. And so I thought that's what I should do too. And I made it like 2 weeks. And I was like, no, thanks, not for me. And quickly changed to finance. And I made it a semester before the professor was like, do you like numbers? Like, no. And he was like, this isn't for you, sweet love. Like, let's go somewhere else. And then I took an elective around buyer behavior. And I was like, oh, this is where I need to be right here. And that's how I fell in love with marketing and trying to figure out how consumers and people's minds work, and what makes them buy and what makes them not want to buy and all of that. So that's how I kind of got into marketing at UNCG. I double majored in marketing and communication studies, and graduated in 2014. Yeah, 2014. I met my husband there. He's a teacher, so very opposite ends of careers, but we make it work. We have 2 awesome little girls who could not be more different than either one of us. And it's amazing. And you never know what you're going to get with the 2 of them. And they are almost 4 and 6 now. And then currently I work for Nomad Digital Marketing Agency out of Charlotte. We focus on, digital marketing for industrial companies. My background is similar to Kerri's. It's textile focused. I've come from a long line of textile driven apparel, high performing manufacturing companies, and making the switch over to agency life has been awesome and exciting. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Great. We're so happy to have you here. So why don't you tell us about what branding means and why it isn't just a logo? I think most people think you slap a logo on it, it's branded. Everybody sees those commercials about branded items and all that stuff. So what does branding mean in the context of what you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so that was one of the first aha moments for me, was realizing that your logo is your brand identity in the sense of how people recognize you if they're looking, if they're using their eyes. But branding as a whole is who you are, who you want to be, who your clients or your customers think you are, even if that's not who you are. That's your brand. If your consumers recognize you in that area, whether it's good or bad, that's your brand. And it's everything. Your brand is literally everything about your business. Being able to define what your brand is huge, and being able to determine, what your values are, who you're selling to, what you're selling, how you want to be perceived. Do you want to be, this high-end thought leader who can push out content that's great, but they don't really care about their community, or they may care, they just don't talk about it? Or do you want to be, midline, really great stuff, but we focus on our people and we focus on our community? And all of that goes into branding and how you tell your story. That's what it boils down to. Your brand is your story, and how you tell it matters. And your logo is just a piece of that, just the creative identity.
So what are some companies that you think today are doing a really great job branding? And what are some reasons why they're so successful?
So I've come from B2B space. So a lot of my like people that I look at a lot are on the B2B space. Or they're consumers, but how I interact with them is B2B. My favorite company to look to in terms of branding is Morris Jenkins. They are an air conditioning company. I did not know what they did for probably 2 years of loving the brand. They're a huge community activist. Excuse me. They take time to really tell the story about the company, and that they wouldn't be where they are without their consumers. And I think that's a huge thing. They're also a huge donator to the Children's Hospital in Charlotte, which is really close to my heart just because my girls have spent more time than I care to there. And that's kind of how I got accustomed to Morris Jenkins. So not knowing what they sold, but knowing who they were for 2 years is pretty huge. And that's kind of the standard of people that I talk to about them. And then now knowing what they do, they make sure that you know who their texts are. Every single piece of content, whether that's commercials or social or a billboard, whatever it is, it's someone that's actually wearing the Morris Jenkins uniform. And it's not somebody that's paid, or it's not a photoshopped image. And that I love that, like being able to know the person coming to my home is who they say they are. They hold those values. So that to me is a great brand. Another one is Airbnb. They're a great storyteller. They make you want to get on a plane and go wherever you want to go and live there as long as you can. And the way they handle COVID that whole time period was fascinating to me, because a lot of people shut down because they had to. And Airbnb kind of pivoted that and said, shut down with us, was one of their kind of taglines during that time. And I was like, well, you're right. Like, we can be shut down, but we can be anywhere and be shut down as long as we're responsible about it. So that was another one that I really loved to kind of keep an eye out for.
I love hearing about that Airbnb. I agree with that Airbnb. I got married March 14th, 2020. Eric knows, he was there. We were supposed to go to France the next day, and obviously that was like basically the day that everything shut down. We had 2 Airbnbs scheduled in France. We had no issues getting things canceled and, not losing money on it. I thought they handled that entire thing with no roadmap for it really, really well.
They are very customer centric. And I mean, that you can never go wrong, being able to take care of your customers and make it easy on them.
So tell us about, you mentioned in your brief about the buyer journey. So tell us what that means and why that's important for a brand and how it affects the brand.
So buyer journey is something that we at Nomad have really kind of dug our heels into over the last 8 to 9 months. And it's just that, it's your buyer journey. It's what makes your customers want to find you, what issues are they facing that they need answers to, what triggers are happening on their end that say, I need XYZ and I need somebody to do that. And knowing what those questions they're asking and how you answer them, instead of, for example, we have a seal company that is one of my clients. And we did this work with them, and at the beginning of it, they we're your sealing solution. Cool, but for what? Like what? How am I going to find you online? And we did the work, and we realized like their customers are coming in at a point where they're saying, I don't know what I don't know. I just know what I have right now. It's not working. And so being able to drill down to like figure out what questions a customer is asking that triggers them to start looking is step 1 of your buyer journey. And then following that through their whole process from start to finish, all the way down the funnel. And being able to know those steps, whether it's, okay, it's going to be a 6-month buying time, or it's going to be a 6-day buying time, and what trigger points happen on each one of those roadmaps. And then as a digital marketer, how that plays in is at X point on that roadmap, I can drop a piece of content in that's going to continue to answer their questions, or I can, have a sales guy reach out, because at X point is when they're ready to talk to sales. And at every point, knowing how to message, and that comes into your brand, knowing what your brand message is, knowing how you want to communicate at every stage of that buyer journey, is just going to help them through the funnel even more. And even if they don't close win, there's a chance that you're still going to be top of mind when they come back looking again.
So when you're mapping that buyer journey, are you like interviewing buyers and kind of walking through it with them? And then also you mentioned, at this trigger point, you need this. So it sounds like you need to have also a good relationship with, I don't know, IT people or whoever it is that's helping you with that. How does that work?
Yeah. So at Nomad, we kind of handle all of that for our clients. We are able to interview some actual clients of our clients, so end users, to figure out what their triggers are. We also do a lot of keyword research and like Hotjar analysis on websites, competitor research. All that plays into those trigger points there. And it's also talking to the sales team, getting that FaceTime with them, because they're the ones who are typically and traditionally answering the questions when they get to that point. And this is kind of just helping that along.
The frontline people.
Yeah. Just figuring out, like, what questions are you getting? What's your most asked question? And you start there, and then you kind of just do your research around that. And then in terms of like the trigger points, we do a lot of research. It's really heavy research space in the beginning to figure out what steps people are taking to move down the funnel, and how we can shorten that time period, or drive traffic to where we actually want them to go, instead of them clicking all over the website or going back out and doing more research. If we know, if they come in on this keyword term or this question and they answer, we know that they need to go to a certain section of the website. Instead of them landing on the homepage, we can send them directly to that piece of content that's going to answer their question directly. That's going to move them further down the funnel. So if you're doing this from a corporate marketing side, being able to have access to your website analytics is huge. And then if you have a CRM, having access to your CRM and your pipelines to see how your sales team's interacting with opportunities. Again, that's pretty heavy on the B2B side. B2C is not as pipeline driven, but that's kind of how I've worked that in the past.
So you talked a little bit about websites. How important is branding for your digital presence, like websites and social media and other forums?
It's huge. I kind of said this earlier, but your brand is everything. It's how you communicate. Your brand message is and should be carried through in any piece of content, all the way down to like your call centers. And having anyone who's talking to a client saying the same thing. Obviously, we're not robots. We're going to communicate the way we communicate, but having that general brand message of who you are, what you represent, and how you respond to situations, ingrained in all of your Salesforce and all of your marketing materials, and your employees as a whole, is huge. And then from a website standpoint, we have taken that buyer journey. So you take all the triggers, and then you take your brand messaging that we do with clients, and then we take a look at your homepage, and we say, this needs to go, this needs to be moved up. People don't actually care about this. And it's making sure you're touching on all of those big trigger points on your website, or on your homepage. That way, if they do land on the homepage, it's an easy way to navigate through the website to continue on the buyer journey.
So you mentioned a little bit about the communications piece of it, which is, obviously heavily involved with the branding. We talked earlier about sort of the consumer relationship that brands have. Can you share a couple examples of brands that have had to pivot their marketing strategies because of, branding gone wrong?
Yeah. I think the biggest one that we all are kind of aware of is the Kanye and Adidas situation. So he went off and said the things he did. And it took Adidas longer than it should have to respond to that. And when they finally did, Kanye ended up getting dropped from like 11 additional brands, which is kind of telling of why it's important to know your influencers if you're going to go the route of influencer marketing. So you can kind of not have that happen as much as possible. But also, like, Adidas is still, I think Adidas is still kind of flailing around. They, we kind of talked about this before the call, but they're, to save their sustainability efforts, which we're all very privy to at this point, they can't just dump all of that, the Yeezy products. They can't just get rid of that and destroy it, because then that's wasteful. But at the same time, it's like, how do you handle that? And they haven't really said. They've said that they're not working directly with Kanye anymore, but they're still selling the products. But it begs the question of like, okay, well, are you profiting from that, or are you going to donate that to causes that were affected by the things that were said? And so that's one that it's gonna be really interesting to see how that plays out the next 6 to 9 months. Another one as a digital marketing one that I like kind of watched like a train wreck was the Tarte cosmetic influencer to buy trip that happened, I think, in January. Honestly, the highlight of my Q1, just to sit back and watch it all happen. For those of you that don't know, Tarte is a cosmetic company that used to be indies, kind of mainstream now, but they dropped a ton, like millions of dollars, to send influencers to buy for, I think, 2 or 3 days, all first class on like the Emirates, I can't say it, flights and like villas at the nicest hotels and all the stuff. And they didn't have it anywhere in their contracts that they actually had to use Tarte cosmetics. So these influencers were doing like they're getting ready with me videos, which that's what they're known for. And they used 1 to 2 products that were Tartes, and they had to like, what is it? What's this supposed to do? Actually, I don't think I like this. Take it off and put my own stuff on over top of it. And I was sitting there like, oh, that's not going to be a fun thing to go back to on Monday when like you have to go back into the office and answer for that. And Tarte did a really good job of kind of making fun of themselves for it. Their owner came on to TikTok and did like this funny, like, okay, cool, I get it, like I messed up kind of parody video, and it was great. And they're still talking about that more so than the negative influence that the trip had. So those are my 2 big ones right now.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like in that example, it's like, I feel like everybody has pretty much known about the Kanye Adidas thing before the hubbub that's happened. Because both of those brands really big, but like I hadn't really heard of Tarte before until, this conversation. So it's almost like, they got more brand recognition because of making a mistake,
Right.
Which is an interesting way to pivot. So how do brands get feedback on their strategies before launching to the public? We touched on it a little bit earlier, but like, are focus groups still really important, or have things changed as technology has changed, or AI, or anything like that?
That's a good question. I really think it depends on the industry you're in, if you can do focus groups or not. The industries that I've been a part of in the past and currently focused on now, we don't really see focus groups just because we're such a like tight-knit group. Like, it's a big industry, but everybody kind of knows everybody. For a B2C standpoint, I still see value in focus groups. I think they take shape a little bit differently now than what they have traditionally. Obviously, most everything's going to be digital. And one thing that I found out about a couple weeks ago is that brands are starting to do like covert focus groups, basically. Like they're doing the same way you would set up an ad campaign. They're setting up these audiences to go after and kind of beta test their ads on TikTok or on Facebook or wherever, to see how they play before they really put their dollars behind it. And I think that's a really big play that we're probably going to see more of in the future. And that kind of plays into the AI side of it a little bit, but you don't really know you're in a focus group until, well, I don't know that you'd ever know you're in a focus group outside of like the company itself, but.
Yeah, I know. It's like, how do they measure that? Is it just, eyeballs on the thing and how long they stayed on there? Probably.
Yeah, I think it depends on what the goal would be for the campaign. If you're looking for brand awareness and that's all you're going after, then eyeballs on it is probably a great KPI to track. If you're going after conversions, and there's like a strong CTA where you're trying to get either information from someone, or drive sales. I think it'd be a little different, but I think it depends on what the goal is first.
So you talked a little bit about social media earlier. I wanted to circle back to some of that. It seems like from a consumer side of it, or I guess this would be B2C, the forum in which a brand, communicates seems like it's important. So like that Tarte thing, TikTok is where their, end users are. So how do brands navigate that to try to figure out how to talk to their audience?
That's a great question. That also stems from your buyer journey. If you know who your ideal client is, and that's kind of fleshed out really hard in that buyer journey process. If you know who your ideal buyer is and that persona is, there's tools that you can use to track them. You can use your own consumers and see where they're at. You can use SEMrush is another good one. That's really more like website based, but it's still a great tool to use. There's some AI tools that I haven't really gotten into yet, but they claim to do that. And then it's trial and error. My running joke is that I'm a marketing person, not a miracle worker. And it's okay to fail as long as you fail and learn. If you, spend 10% of your marketing budget on a platform you think is going to work, as long as you don't continue to do that, and if it's not working and you stop it, okay, we now know that that's not where our dollars need to be spent. But if you don't take that risk, and that's where your audience is, I had that happen 6 months ago. I was dead set that these engineers from textile companies are not going to be on Facebook. They're not going to want to engage business on Facebook. That's where they're at for that specific company. And I was like, okay, I'll eat my words. But I, being the marketing person, the consultant on that account, was like, absolutely not. That's not going to work. I'll try it, but we're wasting our time, guys. Like, we should definitely be over here on LinkedIn or retargeting somewhere. And Facebook blew it out of the water. And it just depends on, trial and error and knowing who your audience is and what that demographic is. And like all the way down to when they're engaging with your brand or with brands in general. A fun case study for us was around open times on emails. So we did a bunch of A/B testing on the same email, same subject line, same send group over a 3-month period. We sent it at different times during the day. And for Nomad, the open time was at 12:45 p.m. So coming back from lunch was when that's like our ideal time to send emails to the clients that we have in our database. But we wouldn't have known that had we not set up testing.
Just real quick, open time is people actually open the email? That's
Yeah.
yeah.
So the time that they're actually like spending on the email, not just like clicking it to get their notification to go away. But if you send it any later, you're lower in their inbox coming back from lunch. And if you send it any earlier, you're going to get trapped with the rest of everybody that's sending it at lunchtime. But most people come back from lunch between 10 to 15 minutes early to start going through emails. And if you can hit that time, if you can figure that time out, for us, that's when it worked best. Some clients, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Some it's 8 o'clock at night. It's just trial and error.
Interesting. So another thing that I'm just curious about, like you mentioned, knowing your customer, and a lot of brands, not as much of an issue on a local scale, but a lot of brands, that are global, like that's something I know the company that I work for, we're a global company. And so your brand might show up differently in different regions. So what are how do you feel like that should be addressed? Do you feel like companies need to have branding specific to each region? Or do you feel like it's possible to have branding from sort of one hub?
That's a great question. So I come from a global background too. We distributed yarn and threads throughout the world. And we had a really big debate around that of, well, our headquarters is in the UK, so everything should be UK based. But like we were showing intimate apparels or denim on females, and the way that appears in the UK and the US is very different than how that appears in Asia and that side of the world. And you have to be aware of that, or you're going to lose a ton of demographics. I do think that there needs to be a consistent message, but how you say that message can change, and how you show up for that message can change. So I definitely think if you're a global company, that there needs to be someone from each location or each region who is aware enough, and if they're not on the marketing team, they at least have that sense of this will work or this won't, to be able to help support that.
Yeah, I think, from a global perspective, that was probably the biggest challenge during the pandemic is, you didn't have to travel. Even if you had feet on the ground in other regions, from an apparel perspective, like buying trips and all of that were really affected. Yeah. So we do have a question. Do you have any recommendations for tools to help you manage a brand, like specific software?
My favorite, I have two favorites. Sprout Social is a great one. If you don't have a software to help manage your social media, you can also manage social media through Sprout Social. But they're a really great tool. You can set it up for your brand, obviously, like the name of your company, and then also any keywords or triggers that are associated with your brand. And it will listen around any digital space for any mentions of that. And then it will alert you if anything is negative or positive. And then it will also help you score your brand. That's a really great one. The other one was Brand Watch. I haven't used it as much, but it's really cool too. It's more focused on social media, like just listening on the social platforms. And Meltwater is another really great one that listens holistically. That one you track your analytics a little bit more. So if you are doing your own brand work and posting, it will also track how your message is being received, as well as what other people are saying about you.
Got a couple more that are rolling in. What CRMs do you like? And you want to break out that acronym for people that don't know what CRM is?
Yeah, so CRM is your customer resource management tool. Some people call it a CRS, your customer resource
System.
system. I was like, I can't think. You asked, and now I'm like, I don't know. HubSpot is my absolute favorite. That Nomad is a HubSpot partner. I've used several. I like the Microsoft one as well. I just blanked on the name. I used it in a previous role, and it was really great. The reason I like HubSpot so much is they have a free version, and then you can add on depending on how big your company is. You set up your pipelines the way you want. You can score, you can set up workflows. And so what a workflow is if someone hits your website, they fill out a form or they do something, they trigger an action to get their information, and it hits HubSpot. You can set up how that is handled automatically in HubSpot. So if it needs to go to a salesperson, or if it needs to go into an email campaign to nurture them along the funnel, or if it's a junk and it just needs to go away, all of those can be set up. You can do a lot through HubSpot. You can do your emails, you can host your websites, you can host landing pages. You can manage your social media through there. It's just a really great tool that is easy to integrate with a lot of ERPs and manages a lot of different things for not a lot of cost.
Yeah. So good out of the box. You don't have to do like a ton of customizations, and yeah, those are always challenging. We have to do those systems integrations and connectivity. So another question popped up. How do you feel about Canva?
Well, I love Canva. Love Canva. I have a graphics background, and I will spend all of my time in Canva if I can. It does have its limitations that you would probably need to go to a graphics like Adobe Suite tool to use. But for my clients who are either a one-man marketing team or they don't have that graphic background, I train them on how to use Canva. It's so easy to use. It's so user-friendly. Everything's there. You can load your brand visuals in. So if you have like those brand identity pieces, your logos, your colors, your typeface, all of that can be loaded in. And it's got a great free version, and the paid version is not very expensive either. It's a lot cheaper than training yourself on Adobe Suites or hiring an agency to handle that part of your marketing.
Yeah, I agree. The Adobe Suite, so I also, from the design background, have the Adobe Suite, but in the old days, you could just buy a box off a shelf and it was $500 for the whole suite, and that's what you had. And now I think I don't know what the commercial rate is. It's like, I think for everything, it's like $100 a month.
Yeah.
Per license or something like that. So another question popped up. How would you suggest taking the temperature of your brand to make sure, like you said, what you think your brand is the same as what the clients think your brand is?
Those social listening tools that I mentioned earlier are really great tools to do this with. Another way to kind of track this, it's not as direct, but once you have your messaging in place and you have your buying journey in place, and your updates made to your website, track your conversions. If your conversions are tracking better, then it's working. And then ask people, ask your clients, like we ask that question during our customer surveys at the end of every quarter, like, would you recommend us to someone else? Let's have an honest conversation. If not, our service needs work. So let's have that conversation. But if you're trying to do it kind of low key without drawing a lot of attention, your listening tools are probably your best bet, and then kind of moving up from there.
Great. So we have about 20 minutes left. So if you guys have more questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, or direct message them to Maddie. So while we're waiting on those last questions to roll in, what's some advice that you would give to current students who are interested in entering a career in branding?
always keep big picture. Don't get so tunnel vision down on what you're working on, that day or that quarter, even that year, that you can't think big. It may get shot down, but think big, no matter what you're doing. Branding, marketing, saving the world, whatever, think big. I have been in roles where we put this amazing plan together and COVID hit, or numbers weren't as great as they thought they were going to be. And marketing budgets are 90% of the time the first ones to go. So being able to have that big picture view of where you want to go in 5 years, as well as being agile enough to say, okay, well, this isn't working, or okay, I went from a $500,000 budget to a no budget. Like, how are we gonna make it work? Because they still expect the results. That's the great thing about marketing. That's probably my biggest thing. And to have fun, like that's the whole reason I fell in love with marketing. It was adult enough, but I could also still be creative and still take risk and still have fun and just do what you like. And if you don't like it, find something that you do.
Another question popped in. Is there any advice that you give to students for things that they can take advantage of while they're in school and at UNCG?
I wish I had taken more advantage of internship opportunities earlier. That was amazing for me. That's where I learned what social media actually was, and that I actually did like marketing. Also to take more advantage of study abroad, any type of trip that you're going to get school credit for and you can go see the world, do it. Learn while you're there, figure it out. Because like we were joking, my entire family is medical, teacher. Like I'm the only one not first responder, like people helper person. And they're like, well, why don't you go back to school? And why don't you do this? And why don't you do that? And like, what was your biggest takeaway from, your marketing classes? And I was like, that I like it. Like that, Dr. Hovis taught me really what not to do in terms of business law. Those are the things that I remember. Marketing changes so much that take in what you can, but make your connections, make your network, build your network, and stay close to that network. Eric was part of my network, and that's how I'm here today talking to you guys. And that's part of the fun of it. Like marketing changes, be agile, make sure you learn. Don't ever think you're the smartest person in the room, because you're probably not. And if you are, don't be that person that acts like that. But have fun. It's just fun.
I totally agree. I wish I had done the study abroad. It seems like it's an even more robust program. I graduated a long time ago. Not that long ago, but it's way cooler now.
I always call it the spitter. Smartest person in the room is PITR. Don't be the spitter.
I love that. And I agree with the internship thing too. I mean, I've told students many times, because this worked for me, if you go to an internship and you hate it, it's way better to know that at that time, and all internships were pretty much unpaid. It's way better to learn that than getting into a career and feeling stuck. So I did 2 internships. I was super lucky. And the first one didn't work out. It just wasn't a fit. The second one is how I figured out what I wanted my career to be. So I love telling students that too. So I think you covered this one. It was anything you did right in undergrad that you would recommend?
Biggest thing is make your connections, even your professors. I still talk to professors all the time. I still have questions that I'm like, I don't know what to do. Help me.
Yeah.
They'll be there. And don't just, I keep saying have fun. I probably have too much fun, but don't get so bogged down. Like obviously you're at school to go to school and to get an education and be successful with your life, but you're only going to be in college once, at least that type of college, possibly. But after you leave, it's never going to be the same. Like, don't take yourself so seriously that you can't have fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget the faculty actually love hearing from you after you're gone. And they are huge resources. And it's like, if you're going to pay all that money to go to school, you should use it for the lifetime. Because I do the same thing. I keep in touch with a lot of my old professors.
And they're the first ones typically to comment on something that I've done on LinkedIn or a new change for me. They're like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. Like, this is great. I'm like, oh, I feel good now. Like, you remember me, I made an impression.
It's also a great thing as a hiring manager, because they can say, hey, I have this like star student, and, especially if you're hiring for internships and that kind of thing. So another question, how do you manage situations when working with conservative legal compliance departments that shoot down every marketing idea? That sounds very targeted.
Yeah.
To whoever put that in.
Yeah. Would love to have a deeper conversation around that. Because I've had some very heated conversations. I have always been the one to not be afraid to say, well, if you don't approve this or you can't tell me what I can do, I can't get you results. What we're doing is not giving you the results you want. How can we, within that compliance realm, how can we move forward? And if we can't, then we'll stay status quo. That having that conversation has always been the turning point for me in those departments. Also, the longer you do it, the more you learn who they are and how you can get things to like slide by that they may not have before. But again, it all goes back to like knowing who your audience is. And if it's super conservative and your audience is super conservative, then it may be correct that legal shoots it down. If they're just doing it because they don't understand what you're trying to accomplish, that's another conversation you can have of asking them like what they think that campaign means, and then actually like telling them what it means and walking them through like the process of the campaign. I've had that happen too, where they don't understand how it works, and they just think that we're going to post something and it's going to be there and everybody can comment on it and say whatever they want. And that's not the case. And they just didn't know, the same way I wouldn't know anything that they do, because that's not my department.
So another question popped up. What do you enjoy most about your career and why?
I love being client facing. The company I came from before was a global textile company. We had 17 divisions that I've supported. And that gave me the insight to say, like, I want to do more of that. So I wake up every day and I don't know what client's going to need something that day. But my ultimate goal for any of my clients is how can I support their team and build their team up to make them successful. And we at Nomad like pride ourselves on playing it like that behind the scenes role, to where we can build the marketer on the corporate side up to where they look so good in front of their like C-suite and their boardrooms and stuff. And they have the confidence to walk in and say, this is what's going on, and training them up. And I love that. That's probably my favorite piece of it. The KPIs and watching sales roll in, that's great. But being able to say, this person has grown this much and they know that I'm a resource, as well as they're my resource in that industry to go back and forth with, is probably my favorite thing, watching them succeed.
It's interesting hearing you say that, and you were connecting back to I come from a line of first responders. You're still people focused. You're still, not knowing what that day is going to hold sometimes, right? So sounds like you are kind of in that realm.
Like that.
Yeah.
I like
So I guess we have about 10 more minutes left. So pretty close to wrapping up. One last one that looks like here, and you guys feel free to shoot any more into the chat. How could student organizations help students in their branding careers?
I did not take enough. I did not use the student center as much as I should have. And that's probably one of my bigger regrets. They're such a big resource. When I did use them, they helped me figure out what my major should be. They figured out what internship I should do. But I was in a sorority. I was an 80 Pi, and I tell people that sometimes, and they're like, "You're one of those girls," but yeah, I am. It has helped me so much because every interview, I'm like, "Oh, this is recruitment. I got this. I can do this in my sleep." Or it's given me the confidence to walk into a room full of anybody, really, because if you can talk in front of, 100 to 200 girls on any given day, you can talk to just about anybody. Being able to go in,
crowd.
yeah, especially if you catch them like in the morning, it's a lot. And it's also like it's made my network that much larger. Eric and my husband were in a fraternity together, so that's another example of Greek life being more than the 4 years. And then I also was an advisor at Queen's University for almost 5 years. And being a mentor helped me tremendously in my career, being able to kind of hone in on those training skills that I didn't have before has helped me. And what I just said was my favorite thing about my job, being able to train other people.
That's great. I have to do 2 plugs for UNCG organizations. So in undergrad, I was in the Threads organization in the CARS department. And that was just kind of like the fashion version of a sorority. And a lot of them were actually in sororities as well. So that was really great. But I also wanted to share the organization that anyone on here who's an alumni has access to, and that is the Bryan School Alumni Association board. So I'm currently on the board. I was board president last year. And it's a great opportunity to stay connected to the university after you graduate, keep up with those network connections. And even if you don't have time to be on the board, there is a way to, so there's an application process. Maybe Maddie can throw that link in the chat if you want to apply to be on the board. But we also always look for people to help out and attend, event sessions like this one, and send us ideas for other events and that kind of thing, and other networking opportunities.
Nailed it.
Okay. I do it.
Yes.
Branding. So I think I don't see anything else in the chat. But so let's go ahead and wrap up. Kerri, any last words you want to share with the viewers?
I'm going to drop my email in the chat. And if you guys have any more questions or want to dive into more like specifics around your industry, around branding or digital marketing as a whole, shoot me an email. I'd love to talk. But yeah, I had fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Kerri. And thanks, Maddie and everyone else for being here and taking your lunch break with us.
Thanks, ladies. Thank you so much. Kerri Squared, everyone. Thank you both. Thank you both for joining us and for sharing your expertise with us. I know that I learned a lot. I hope that everyone else did. I'll be following up with a survey for you guys and a link of this recording for sharing. I hope to see you in the next break room on March 16th on the fundamentals of financial planning at noon.
Love it.
Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.